Hey, today I am going to do a scale swap on a delica. I got a great deal on some flytanium g10 delica scales. I recently bought the micarta setup for the dragonfly and then took the little survey and got a $5 off coupon, so I picked these up for pretty much free shipping for 12 bucks. And I love customizing delicas. I got a few with the titanium backspacers. This one just has the regular FRN one with the Sharpie die job from the burgundy scales, but we'll go ahead and get started on switching these out. I've seen some people have some trouble with these, with getting them back together. So I figured I'd just make this quick little video since I'm swapping the scales on this one anyway, and show y'all how I do it. I've got a T6 for the body screws. I went ahead and took the clip off to spare y'all from that. And we've got a T8 for the pivot screw. So delicas, they can be a pain to put back together with getting the spring right, and they're my favorite knife to customize just because there's so many different options out there. But they might be my least favorite knife to actually take apart and put back together. If y'all saw my other video, I enjoy doing the microtechs actually much more than these, just because they can get just a little finicky, and you have to tune the pivot as well as the lock bar. It has to all be tuned up just right. Alright, so we've got all of our screws out, and I'll go ahead and use this tool just to give a nice gentle there we go. Alright, so we've got the face side scale. We'll go ahead and get this guy off, the first liner. This is just a little plastic pry piece that I like to use. Came with this little Walmart toolkit that was on sale for like $5, so probably not the best quality, but hey, it was $5. So we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and just lay this in the new G10 scale there, just to keep everything lined up the same. So a good bit of play in the G10. Let's compare how much of that type of play there is in the FRN. A good just amount. Okay, just the same. For some of the titanium scale swaps that I've done, when there's a liner that sits inside of a titanium scale, that rattle can be very apparent. With the FRN and the G10, there's a little bit of flex, so when you tighten everything up, it kind of will pin it in place. And when there's titanium, I just pull that right up off there. With the titanium and how rigid it is, you're either going to over tighten it, so it's going to be really bad action, or you're going to have a little bit of rattle. So for titanium on the delica, the Lynch mod is really the way to go. All right, so we got the blade out. We'll go ahead and pull some tension off the spring and just lift up on that lock bar. This is the orientation for that. And so the part of this that gives people most pain is this little divot piece right here, this little built-in retention pin that sits up there. And I'll show you why when we get there. Get all this off. I'll just pop these little barrel nuts out, whatever you want to call them. I do normally like micarta. Normally I would switch from G10 to micarta, but I already have another micarta delica, and I don't have a G10 delica, so I figure might as well get a G10 delica. I'll clean that up a little bit. Okay. So I like to just kind of keep everything in place where it all goes. That way it can just go back together the same. I mean, I'm sure all of these barrel nuts and all the screws, they're relatively uniform, so it's probably not going to hurt anything if you mix them up, but it's just a habit. All right, so I'll go ahead and start with getting the first side of it back together. All right, so the body, main pivot there. And you gotta kind of hold them up in there. So I just laid the liners in the new G10 scales, putting the little barrel nuts all back in place, and sometimes if you let these go, they'll just drop right on out. Can be a little finicky. It's just the way I kind of like to do it, is just to have everything ready to put down and build back up. So we've got that in place. Now we'll go ahead and slide our back spacer back in over these. And you got to make sure you come straight down on it. If you do one side too much over the other, then it won't want to fit on the far side. There we go. And once you get it, you shouldn't have to really force it down. So then we'll go ahead and get our spring back in. This is how it is oriented, just like that. Now we'll get our lock bar and actually take that pivot screw out. Jump the gun on that one and keep the washer on the blade. So we'll put our pivot screw in place. So we've got the entire setup here without the blade or the washers. And the reason why you don't want to, what I've seen the main mistake I see people make is from here, they'll put the pivot barrel screw in, put the blade on, get it, you push the lock bar up like this and put the blade on. But what happens when you push that lock bar is it flexes this piece down just enough to where it puts this little top divot FRN piece not properly lined up with where it should fit on this side. And then when you try to clamp it together and you screw it down, what happens is you just completely smush this piece, and then it's not, the spring tension isn't proper, so then you have like a mushy knife, or a mushy action on it, because the spring is flexing this whole piece out too much. So you don't want to flex it and then add it on. We got to put it all together, then we flex it and put the blade in. And I learned this because I've ruined a couple of these without knowing it, and you would see there's a gap once you get it all together, because this top piece, if you try to put the other side of the scale on with this tensioned, it's not going to fit properly where it goes there. So we'll take our washers off. Those are going to stay with the blade. And we're going to go ahead and fit our top scale on, top liner and scale. get that together. And so that's what it's going to look like there. Mine is still good. Add a little bit of KPL or lube right here because there is 2 pivot points on this knife, because you can see this lock is a pivot point. This is going to have to be tuned as well as the primary pivot. So I will go ahead and just loosely, very loosely install the body screws. And I'll probably go back in once it's completely back together. I will help if I had the right bit in. I'll go back in and KPL everything down. One at a time once it's all back together. Don't back that out just a little bit. Want it just very loosely in there. We still want a lot of play, so I can show you why in this front one. We can tighten down the back a little more just to make sure that little piece is seated properly. And if I were doing this off video, I'd probably clean it all up a little better, but we'll save you from having to just watch that. You'll know how to do that. Alright, so we've got our body screws in. Back them out just. I feel I got a little bit of play. And really I want to see how much room. I want to make sure. Alright, we got no opening here. So it's fully together. And what I like to do is just to get something slightly thicker than the blade. These bits just happen to be the perfect size. And I'm gonna wedge that in there just below the pivot to open it up a little bit so I can slide the blade in place. So I need to open up these screws a little more. And try not to open them up too much, because of course we want those pieces to remain seated in the scale. All right. So we can see down in there. Let's see, can we? Still fully, everything's in the right place down on that side, but we're opened up here enough to where we can slide the blade in, and there's not a whole lot of pressure across there. But now I've seen where people will just hold this up with one hand and slide it in place and let it go. And that can be a real pain. What I like to do is just avoid all that, and I'll just cable tie this lock down and then cut it off when I'm done. That way I'm not trying to get everything situated with just one hand. So let's slide this in. And usually not doing this on camera. All right, so we just need that compressed enough to where the pivot is open to be able to get the blade in place with our bearings, washers, sorry. And I'm going to add a little KPL just to help stick. outside and on the inside. All right. So now we can slide this into place, and we can see we are got it there. We can see through. So now I'll pull out my little wedge, and then see it's a little out of line. You don't want to force the pivot in there when it's like that, because you could bend the edge of your washers. So you really want to get something small like this, or a nice small pair of tweezers, and really move everything out of the way so you can slide that pivot barrel in there. All right, we looking clear. So believe this, and it's D-shaped, so you just got to make sure you get your orientation right on those. All right, and we're in. We'll go ahead and drop the pivot screw in. Tighten that down. And then cut away that. I would suggest using some wire cutters or something for this part. There we go. Didn't hit the scales. I got my pair 2 with the Maton Boss there. All right, so I'll go ahead and finish. Let's get these body screws all tuned up. So we will start with them not being over tightened. You can really tighten down these back screws a good bit. They aren't going to affect the action of the knife too much, but where we really need to pay attention to the tuning, and I think I put these backwards from where they normally are. That's fine. I like the clean show side. So we can see our action is not too bad, actually. Solid lockup. That doesn't ever happen. We never get it just right on the first time. Let's see, centering. Pretty dang good. That's good for a stock Delica. We've got everything fully seated. I'd like it to be able to drop a little cleaner when I do a one-handed close. So I'll back this up until I feel that it's loose, and as soon as I feel that it's starting to grab or stiffen up a little bit, I'll loosen or stop right there. So now, like, the pivot was very loose still, so most of that back off the pivot just a tad, back off the lock bar just a bit. 100% solid lockup. A nice drop on that. That's where I like it to be. Where I don't have to shake it at all. I just hit that lock bar and it closes right up. That's nice. I like that a lot. Wow. So I've got a little off-brand titanium deep carry clip I'm going to throw on there. Let's go and do that so we can get a final product. So it looks like our scales are just barely too thick for our screws. Are they? Sometimes when you get aftermarket scales, yeah, just enough. Sometimes when you get aftermarket scales, the clip screws aren't long enough to make it to the liner, because the liner is what they actually thread into. And maybe it's a combination of this particular aftermarket clip is a little too thick and the scales are a little too thick and these screws just aren't catching. So only the back one is. Interesting. Well, looks like I'm going with the stock clip. All right, well, pretty cool set of scales for a really good price from Flytanium. I'm happy with them. There's no rattle. I mean, that rattles from the clip there, but sometimes you have a little bit of play in the scales just because of the way the construction is with the liners, and there's none. There's no play in the blade. I mean, everything went together real good. It kept the weight really nice. Sometimes titanium scales on these add way too much weight. I'm happy with it. Cool. Very well worth $12.